Hello and welcome along to Mondo Chelloveck Movies. My name is John, and this video is going to be a complete ranking of the Nightmare on Elm Street franchise. So I've more or less just binge watched this series in the past couple of days, and I've had a good time with it, with certain exceptions. So at number 8 is 1994's Wes Craven's New Nightmare. Now this is the first time I'd ever seen this film. The thing I did like about this film was to see Heather Langenkamp and also John Saxon, Robert Englund, and even Wes Craven playing themselves in this film. And that's about it, if I'm honest. But for me personally, the thing I didn't like about this film was a young lad's character. He just really got me nerves. And I couldn't wait for this film to end. Actually, it's the longest one in this whole franchise. It was okay. The ending was all right, but it just really, I found myself thinking, can this just not end? And I didn't feel like that with any of the other ones, although I've got to say I've got some certain views on certain of the films coming up. But it was a bit of a wasted opportunity for me. I did like a large chunk of it when the kid wasn't in. When the kid was in, it sort of didn't go anywhere for me. So at number 8, that's Wes Craven's New Nightmare. So at number 7 is 1988's A Nightmare on Elm Street Part 5. So this film follows on directly from Part 4. And I've got to say that it comes down to characters in this film. I was thinking to myself back in the day, did I watch all of these films? Because I know that I haven't watched a couple of them. But when I was watching this one, I couldn't remember any of it. But when I saw the woman getting force fed at the table, that's when I thought, yes, I've definitely seen that. I remembered that scene. What I will say about part 5 is it's got some amazing special effects. But sadly, the storyline is really preposterous, as it is in most of these films. If even Friday the 13th has some stupid things that happen in it. But you can forgive it for it because obviously it's set in this kind of dream world. Anything can happen. But sometimes you think, wow, are they going to this place really? There's two members of the cast which I wished had been in for longer. You'll know what I mean without spoilers. So part 5 could have been better for me if the cast was more memorable and the storyline wasn't so daft. So at number 7, that's Nightmare on Elm Street Part 5. Coming in at number 6 is A Nightmare on Elm Street Part 4. Now, this was the same as part 5, although I thought part 5 was a lot worse than part 4. The biggest fault for me is when they changed the main actress, Patricia Arquette, when they changed her character to a different actress. And that really took me out of the film. I've got to say that the woman who played her looked as a dead ringer for Madonna. And that's all I could think of when I was watching this film. But just like part 5, I thought the effects in here were absolutely brilliant. You can't beat practical effects for me. I know some of the later ones did have some CGI in it, which didn't really work for me at all. But again, for me, like part 5, I think the storyline at this point had just got a bit too daft. And it's a shame they did that, but I know they had to sort of change it a bit to keep this series going. So at number 6, that's Nightmare on Elm Street, Part 4. At number 5 is Freddy's Dead, The Final Nightmare. Yeah, right. How many times have I heard this in the series? I really enjoy this movie. I've got to say, this is the first time I've ever seen this one. I haven't got no recollection of this at all. After Part 5, this was quite a refreshing take on the franchise. I did find that obviously 4 and 5 just weren't really cutting the mustard for me, and I thought I don't mind movies that go a little bit stupid, a little bit daft, that don't make too much sense. Especially in slasher movies, you can get some really strange events, and you just think, my God, are they going to this place? And I was just glad that this one seemed to be a little bit more. I mean, it is a bit fantastical in places, but it seemed to make a bit more sense than the other two that just preceded it. And I did think that it was an enjoyable film, and I was thinking I was going to really not get that much out of it because I've heard a lot of bad things about it. You could really tell it was a 3D movie when it came out because it's got a lot of 3D gags in it, although not as many as I would have thought. The obviously the knives and stuff like that. But there was a lot of things that I thought they could have done a lot more with the 3D in it, but they didn't really do that. It seemed a bit strange to come out in 1991 with a 3D movie because I didn't think they were kind of big at that time. It was mainly the early 80s that would be in the 3D boom. But not taking anything away from it, I did enjoy it. Like I say, I went through all of these with just an open mind, and I'm quite willing for them to be, to enjoy them. I'm not going to actually just take anything offense of them, but I do think that the last three that I've talked about have been a little bit kind of just not somewhere where I would have really wanted to go if I was in control of this franchise. And I do think that in general, for me, when I'm looking back on them, compare them to Friday the 13th, Friday the 13th does go a bit crazy at times, but I think actually, and I didn't really realize this at the time, A Nightmare on Elm Street goes a little bit more crackers towards the end of its run. But this one, I know it's the second one from the end, if you exclude the remake. It's pretty good for me in my judgment. I just thought it was an enjoyable movie. It's not the best movie I've ever seen, but as a Freddy movie, a latter Freddy movie, I thought it was pretty good. So at number five, that's Freddy's Dead, The Final Nightmare. At number four is Freddy versus Jason. Now, when you think about it, this is the last film for Freddy and Jason. I know they got both got remakes after this in 2010 and 2009, but this was kind of like their swan song. And to be honest, in previous watches, I haven't really cared for that much. But on my last watch, and I watched it when I watched it with a Friday the 13th ranking, which I'll leave down there below if you haven't seen that one. This movie actually came to life a little bit more, and I found myself enjoying it. Now, the main problem I've got with it, I think it's more like a Freddy movie, which I'm more than willing to include in this lot as a really good Freddy movie. Actually, I did enjoy it. As a Jason movie, it's not that great, if I'm honest. When I put it into that ranking, even though I did enjoy it a lot more on that time when I watched it the last time, in it, judging it from a Jason point of view, I did find that I was enjoying it more, but I do think it's got its limitations when it comes to the whole crossover could have been done much better, if I think about it. But as a Freddy movie, it's pretty good actually, and it's a shame to say that in 2003 when it came out, this is the last time that the classic Jason and Freddy squared off in any way, shape, or form. So here's hoping, fingers crossed, that they will do something to kind of bring these two characters back to life in some way, shape, or form. So at number four, that's Freddy versus Jason. And number three is, and this could have went quite a few different ways, but at this point, I'm going to say at number three, it is A Nightmare on Elm Street, Part Three. Apart from Patricia Arquette screaming, which got me nerves, I've really enjoyed Part Three. It's got the best setups and scenarios. It's got a great cast as well. Heather Langenkamp does come back in this one as it plays the same character, but obviously she's a bit more grown up, and she's got a sort of a job doing stuff with people with sleep problems. So I found it very entertaining. And these things, a bit like Friday the 13th, if you have a good cast, it'll carry the movie. I think the cast here was maybe probably one of the best casts going. Of course, they're all going to be coming out in 4K next year, apparently. So, in my eyes, at this point, would I get the whole lot in 4K? I don't think I would. If there was a 4K box set, I'd probably pick that up because obviously it's the whole lot. But I'm thinking if I had to choose which ones I would want to get, I'd probably get the first three on 4K, and I'm happy with the other ones just being on Blu-ray and that fantastic box set, actually. I know 4 and 5 were a bit of a slog, but I have kind of enjoyed them all the way. I've enjoyed most of the effects and the gags in it, but I do think that 4 and 5, especially 5, just seem to just be so they just don't hit the mark for me. Wes Craven's New Nightmare just didn't do it for me because of the kid just didn't really like that kid at all. Which sounds a bit bad, doesn't it, when you say it out loud? But anyway, at number three, that's A Nightmare on Elm Street Part 3. So at number two is Nightmare on Elm Street Part 2. I thought this movie, when I watched it the last time I watched it, I thought it was absolutely brilliant. I really enjoyed it, and it was my number one with a bullet. Now, on this watch, I've got to say, I did enjoy it, but I didn't enjoy it half as much as I did the first time I watched it in a long time. And I still think it's a good movie. I think that the thing that lets it down for me, in my opinion, is that Freddy just looks a little bit weird in it. He's kind of he's kind of a little bit skinny. I don't know how to put it, but he always seems to come across like his makeup wasn't as good as I remembered it. And yeah, a couple of things took me out of the picture, and obviously the main protagonist, that lad who's in it, who gets on everyone's nerves. He kind of got on my nerves a little bit on this one, and he didn't get on my nerves the last time I watched it. Now this just shows when you come and watch these things in a bulk and you watch the whole thing as a franchise, your views change, and they can change in a couple of months. You can get away with something a lot in one watch, and then the next watch you can think, I just can't get away with that. So it's funny, isn't it, that I think it's the best thing about these is these aren't set in stone. If I do revisit these maybe in a year's time, if they're all out in 4K, I do see them in 4K, my opinions might change completely. I don't know. I probably don't think it'll change as much as my opinion of Friday the 13th did change on my last viewing. But then again, that could change again. And the next one I'm going to do in the kind of ranking, do the whole thing, is going to be Halloween. I don't know when that'll be done, probably next year. Well, not next Halloween, but it'll be done next year sometime because I'm definitely wanting to watch them. But I don't think I've got enough time to watch them before Christmas, maybe. So anyway, at number two, that's Friday the 13th, part two. And of course, that leaves at number one, 1984's A Nightmare on Elm Street. Yeah. I really enjoyed it this time round. I think the 4K adds a lot to it. The dark levels. I've talked about this one before in a different video. The sound, everything in this presentation of 4K has just lifted this movie for me. On the Blu-ray set, it looks brilliant, but this one, I don't know, it just does something else to it. It is just so immersive, and I saw, especially the dark levels. I think this movie is a lot darker than I thought it was, and I just really enjoyed it. The 4K brought it to life for me, and it put it back to number one, which has always been number one with a bullet. But number two was starting to take it over, as I said. But yeah, number one is back on here. Although, if I'm honest, depending on what type of mindset I'm in, maybe one, two, and three can be quite interchangeable at this point. But this is just an absolutely fantastic movie. When this came out, it was a game changer. I remember we went to get this out of the video library, and it was just brilliant. It was like something reborn, because don't forget, we've been starved for a couple of years. The video nasty thing came out, and you couldn't get your hands on anything that was gory. This came along, and it had everything sort of, I thought, put back into it. I know the ending's a bit weird. Everyone talks about that special effects at the ending, and I wish they would have done something with it, but they haven't. I know this has got about 3 different endings on it, but it is what it is, I suppose, and it's a talking point at least. But apart from that, I think this is one of the best horror debuts for any character ever going. But keep an eye out for the full Halloween ranking coming up, and this is no spoiler, but that means I've got to watch Halloween Ends again. Oh my God. Anyway, so thanks for watching. You take care, and I'll see you in the next video. Cheers.